So it's such exciting news to see Michigan's first certified passive house multifamily project. And for me personally, one of my favorite breakfast spots is right across the street from this place. And so as this was getting built over several years, I got to see all the amazing work and detail that went into it. So please join us as we talk with the builder, developer, design, rater to learn how you and your clients can do this too. Now, before we get started, I want to say a huge thanks to our sponsor, Build Equinox. I actually got to go hang out over at our good friend Victor from Build Equinox's home the other week in Wisconsin and learn a little bit more about his Serve2 application and how he integrated it into his existing home with a dual fuel heat pump. And so you can check out that sort of short form video we launched on our YouTube channel to learn a little bit more about doing this in our existing homes and how you integrate these. You can also check more about Serve at buildequinox.com for new construction, multifamily, and their Serve 1000 for larger institutional projects. And a little special announcement will be coming up about them in the spring 2026. So please stay tuned and check them out. All right, so with that, welcome to Lessons Learned, Michigan's first multifamily certified passive house. This course is brought to you by the GreenHome Institute. The GreenHome Institute is a nonprofit with the mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Today, I will be your moderator and host. My name is Brett Little, and I am the education manager here. This course is approved for multiple continuing education units, including three pillars of green in our certified Green Home Professional designation, health, energy, and materials. AIA Health, Welfare, and Safety make it approved for your state-based design or contractor license. Make sure to get the 5-digit passive house code at the end. That will be sent to you as long as you've been here for the entire CEU hour, as well as the ICC code that will be sent to you as well if you need to report that. And a big thanks to Energy Smart Institute for allowing us to get those CEUs. Make sure to check them out for your rater training needs. So, with that, I'm excited to welcome our three speakers here today. Um, James Lewis has actually been part of the Green Home video tours before, and filmed another passive house project with us in Wisconsin. Lindsay Elton, of course, with Eco Achievers, longtime Green Home Institute member, and has been a speaker at our Net Zero conferences. And then in addition, we've got Joel representing Samaritas, and a developer who's going to start first and introduce himself, and then we'll hand it off to James and then Lindsay and hear from everyone from there. So welcome everyone, and Joel, please go ahead and take it away.
Sorry, on this webinar with you all, and my name is Joel Lautenbach. I am the Executive Director of Affordable Living Development for Samaritas. Samaritas is a nonprofit organization serving people and vulnerable people in our communities. We've been in existence for 91 years. During that time, we've grown across the state of Michigan to serve in a variety of ways. We have four pillars of service today. One being the state's largest private provider of foster care and adoption services from foster care. We also are the state's largest provider of refugee resettlement services. We also serve many people with substance use disorders with counseling and treatment. And then finally, in the area of my work, we provide affordable housing solutions to vulnerable individuals. The map that I'm sharing with you just gives us a little glimpse of our impact across Lower Michigan. Today, we have about 850 doors. And more recently, we've been focused on developing housing with the low-income housing tax credit through the state of Michigan's Housing Development Authority. So at Samaritas, we are aggressively pursuing the resources that are required to build high quality affordable housing and then allow people to have a high quality of life for many years. We serve families, seniors, and also people with disabilities in housing. And in the state of Michigan, the low-income housing tax credit is administered using a qualified allocation plan that's developed by the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. This plan changes every 2 years slightly, and the points that are awarded to projects are always being tweaked. And about 3 years ago, I think 3 or 4 years ago, the qualified allocation plan changed to include passive house as a point category where instead of just doing LEED or green building, if you did passive house, you could earn an extra point. And so this is an extremely competitive resource, and there are many applicants and very few projects awarded. So, fortunately, because Samaritas partners with a construction and development firm, Pinnacle Construction, which James Lewis is representing today, we had a partner in our development team that had experience with Passive House. And I'll let James get into that in his section. But we decided that we wanted to pursue this. We knew that our application for the low-income housing tax credit needed every single point available in order to be awarded the core funding that creates affordable housing. And we attempted twice, actually, and on our second time, we were able to put forward an application that won. And so we had went forward as a developer and owner and manager of affordable housing. I didn't have experience with passive house, and I really needed to rely on the expertise of my development partner at Pinnacle and the modelers and raters that they brought to the table. But I'm really glad to say that the quality of the build is excellent. We're really pleased with what we've been able to create. Our residents, we're just wrapping up our lease up of this project. We have one unit to go, which is a little tough in December in Michigan to get somebody to move, but we're hoping that we have good news on that last unit soon. But I can remember even during the development process, walking in the building after, let's say, the windows, which is easy for me to understand without being an architect or an engineer. Just closing the window and looking out at one of the busiest roads that runs through the community, State Road 104 in Michigan, and not hearing any cars. And I could just get the sense that this building was tight, it was solid, it was really well made. And so I think, the residents, while we don't have a lot of, history with the residents in that building yet, they're really impressed with the quality. And this is affordable housing, and typically, people have some negative expectations when it comes to the quality of affordable housing, but I think all the extra insulation, all the extra efforts that passive house requires, I think really is already paying off in just the way it feels to someone that walks in the door. So as a developer, I'm motivated to win the resources required to do affordable housing, and passive house was a way for me to get over the finish line here in the state of Michigan. And so, I have to really focus on getting projects done on time, and mitigating risks that come sometimes with these projects. And so, relying on a trusted development team with Pinnacle Construction and then Eco Achievers was key for our project to go forward. So I'll pass the baton over to James Lewis, and he'll help us get more into the details of the project.
Yeah, thanks, Joel, and thanks for the kind words, of course. We've been working with Samaritas now for 6 to 8 years. This was our third project together. We got a fourth that we're about to get in construction on, and a couple more in application right now. So it's been a great relationship, and I would say a very special relationship that allows us to take risks like this. So I've been with Pinnacle for about 8 years now. I am a licensed architect by training, have been developing affordable housing for, a little more than 10 years now. Yeah, maybe 12 years. and a certified passive house consultant. We did our first project. Lindsay and I and Brett actually did some of the verification on it. In Madison, Wisconsin in 2016. Multifamily was in the pilot phase of PHIUS at that time. And yeah, it was a successful project there. And we learned a few things about how to do it a little more cost effectively, and make it easier to operate, and we applied some of those strategies to this building. So what the building is, it is a 53 unit, 4-story, slab on grade, new construction, uh, multifamily project. It's primarily 1 bedrooms, a handful of 2s in there. It's located in Spring Lake, Michigan. So, as Joel was saying, 104 is the main way into Spring Lake. I think the traffic count somewhere around 40,000 cars a day. It is in largely, Spring Lake is largely residential. The site was owned by a church, and they had a vision of selling the parcels to an affordable housing developer, long-term vision by the pastor. And you really need a patient partner like that to hold the land for you while you go through the zoning and the application process. Usually a light tech type project is 3 years from the time you really start thinking about it to the time it's done with construction. I think this one was closer to 4. A couple rounds of application. But it was 2 single family houses in a wooded area that we redeveloped, and that we split off from the church's greater parcel. It was a PUD type process in Spring Lake. So you can see the church is here. The Shell, if you're familiar with Spring Lake, the Shell gas station is right next door to it. The church maintains a playground for the daycare program they run out of it. And there's an existing house that we left in place for the caretaker of the unit. So parking in front and our building in back, and maintaining as much of the trees as we could in the project. You can kind of see our heat pumps on the roof and some of the solar on the roof. The municipality wanted 40% glass on their primary facing facade, which is higher than I think we'd probably want in a normal development, as well as a passive house development. Luckily, it was on the north facade, so we weren't getting as much solar heat gain through that as we would have otherwise. Okay. See our roof plan with our heat pumps and our solar. Here's the lobby, the entryway. Some of the community spaces in the project. Real high quality design. And here is the unit bedroom. You can see some of the woods we were able to leave in place. You got great views. Pretty typical. Kitchen, bathroom. You can see the washer and dryer in the bathroom. And yeah, living space. First floor plan. So you enter off the parking area with the common space, to the east. Office to the west, and then residential on the first floor. Locating the core in the knuckle of the building. So all our electrical and water and on the first floor, and then on the second and third floor it's mostly storage, and then on the fourth floor we got some extra laundry. A little bit of concern with the heat pump dryers. And so wanted to have a little bit more capacity that people could do their bedding in, or other things like that. Yeah, I'm gonna skip out of this one. The project is air source heat pumps for the heating and the cooling. We have a Ventacity ventilation system in there, ERV. ERV per floor is what we went with. Hot water, we decided to go with actually gas-fired hot water system. So the building's not entirely electric on a recirc loop. And insulation is fairly code actually. The walls are R20 plus inch and a half of polyiso, so 7.5 on the continuous on the outside. So that's slightly better than code. The roof, we started at R30, which is code. At some point in the process during construction, we decided we had a little extra money, and so we threw another R13 on top of it. Wasn't necessary to achieve passive house, but just putting a little extra buffer in there. Windows are triple pane, tilt turn, Intus windows. Let's see. I think that covers most of the major specs of the building.
James, yeah, there was a question about the windows, and so
Yeah,
you started answering it, but can you just elaborate a little bit more on what the window selection? Well, I know when it comes to passive house, you got to get the windows right, you know.
yeah. So yeah, triple pane, really well sealed Intus windows. I highly recommend Intus as a manufacturer. They are, I think our U9, our average glazing in the building is U19. So those windows are a little bit better because our storefront's a little bit worse. I think there's a Conair system.
U19, you said?
That's the average throughout the building.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't
okay.
actually remember what I imagine there's U16 maybe,
Oh, okay.
U17, somewhere in there.
And did the solar heat gain change on your sort of orientations as well as you work?
I gotta imagine it does. Go through the report, figure out where all my solar heat gain is coming from. But yeah, it would. Oh, did we change the solar heat gain on the windows? I don't think we
Right,
did
like a
it.
different
Yeah,
selection based on its orientation. Was that
no,
considered?
I don't think we did that. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's different in a multifamily building than in a single family building is they're internally heat load dominated. Um, so your cooling matters. Ventilation's really I would say the driver. Um, in the design, you really got to make sure you do the ventilation system right, and then after that, the other pieces can fall into place. Um, so anyway, I, I'm hoping you can see our scorecard, right? So
Yep.
demand and load weren't much of a challenge in the project. Um, Really getting that energy per person, source energy per person. Um, that's really the challenge in a multifamily job, and that can be helped by the adding solar to the system overall. We did a liquid applied vapor barrier on it. Air tightness, quite good. Lindsay could talk more about that. Um, yeah, what other questions we got coming up from
Well,
the
you mentioned that you can use solar to achieve your source energy, and I'm curious if um that if there's still some sort of threshold, right? Some sort of baseline where you can't really start counting solar until you've hit it, and then you can start counting the solar. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you still need to achieve your heating demand, cooling demand, and loads, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, so you got to get the building to meet those thresholds and work. But no, in terms of I think they only let you count. And sorry, I don't know if I mentioned. So Chris West is our co-CHP PC on the project out of Vermont. He did the modeling on the project, and this like going through the certification process. So some of those nuances, I don't know off the top of my head.
Sure, sure, that's fine. And yeah, I was actually surprised, well, surprised to see there's solar and surprised to hear there's gas. I guess, one's a good surprise and maybe one, is a is a different kind of surprise. But I think of them together because I'm looking at your roof there, and that was my first thought was like your roof is full of condensers, you can't put up solar. So that's where I got surprised, and I was wondering if there was a conversation to have just used ground source to like cover everything, water heating everything, and then allow you for more solar. Like, did that come up in design at all? And I'm
Yeah, I
talking
mean,
about a ground
we tried
source
to figure out how to do
geothermal
a
heat
ground
pump.
source heat pump, geothermal, and tax credits were still available at the time, but it it didn't. It is not close to being cost effective. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, the air source heat pumps are standard in construction now. We do them on non-passive house buildings, basically the same set of heat pumps. Um, so yeah, it's almost a third more to go to ground source, and you're not getting enough performance out of it to justify that
Okay.
cost.
And so you mean like a third more of the cost, and is that inclusive of the tax? Well, the tax credit still does exist in some regards to multifamily folks. Certainly our us in the residential world, we will lose everything now. But do you mean that included in that conversation, or would it be
Yeah,
even more without that?
yeah, it'd be more without that, and
Yeah.
even the complex interplay between the energy tax credits and the LIHTC tax credits
Sure.
um, is
Right.
a pain in the neck. We weren't sure, and we put the solar on and we got the 45L on this thing,
Yeah.
but we weren't sure we were going to have it up front, right? So we weren't modeling that into our stack. That came late in the project in terms
Yeah.
of the value of it.
And on the boiler, I was curious then, okay, so ground source too expensive. Was there any kind of like heat pump tech boilers that were sort of considered and then really factored out there?
Yeah, again, it's a first cost versus operation cost
Hmm.
question there, where yes, it's gas. Um, they're very efficient boilers. You have transmission losses that are coming if you're doing electrical, right? In terms of your source energy, it really doesn't move the model at all. Choosing between the heat pump water heater and the gas water heater, or at least not enough
Hmm.
to justify it. Um,
Hmm.
and from yeah, I mean, if we were looking at an electric hot water heater, non-heat pump electric,
Hmm.
um, then there certainly is like an operating cost loss,
Right.
large one.
Absolutely. Was there what was so what percent of the total load was the solar estimated for, and does that solar mostly just feed the common spaces, or is that benefiting the residents at all?
No, yeah, it's on the house meter. We're generating like 30,000 kilowatt hours a year, somewhere right about there.
Hmm.
Which is, you know, I don't know what percentage that is, but of the common area load, it's a good chunk of it.
Okay. And so yeah, and you're expecting around 4,000 kilowatt hours per person, and you're
Yeah,
generating.
4,200 is the
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, anyone can kind of do the math from there. So yeah, thank you. The question was, what compelled the large west exposure in the design? Why the L shape?
Uh, sites usually design themselves. The existing playground, there's a gazebo right there that we needed to maintain. Yeah, the building is located because of site constraints. We could have had, yeah, it was entirely driven by the site constraints.
Um, Oh, that wasn't a question. That was a comment.
Oh, sorry.
Um,
So someone asked in the chat, yeah, what compelled the L-shaped design? I don't know if you read that off or I just read it and answered it.
you
Um,
just answered that. Yeah. Site constraints. So yeah.
yeah,
Can you just go into some more detail about the ventilation strategy and how to
yeah,
room get fresh air?
yeah. So our ventilation strategy, we put a single ERV on each floor in the knuckle, so in the center, and then pipe down to each unit. You supply in the bedrooms and living space. You exhaust continuous out the bath and the kitchen for balanced ventilation there, um, and you want to do that as efficiently as possible because you know here you go down. Just a ton of your losses is in the ventilation, and your energy balance, as well as um, your heat losses and just total energy use for the building. Um, so a very efficient ERV is important. And the Ventasity is one of the most efficient on the market. That's one place where we chose to spend money because it makes a lot of difference. We did do the common areas. We have a Zender in there too for the common area space. So the units are fed off, um, three Ventastic or four Ventastic units, one per floor. Um,
Um, I think Lindsay, you're going to get into some of the other technical findings. Do we want to shift over to you now to jump in?
Sure. Let's, okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear it and see it. Thanks.
Yeah, and we're good. Okay. All right, cool. Hey everyone. My name is Lindsay Elton with Eco Achievers. We were the third-party verifiers for the project. Our team, I feel, has been pretty fortunate to have worked with James in the past on the Madison Supportive Housing project, but to have really gotten involved in PHIUS certifications for a while. That's our team. We're in Detroit and Chicago. Um, and I too am a CPHC, but so as a verifier, we can do single family and multifamily and commercial projects. I'm a CPHC, but that's really just to be dangerous. So glad we had the expertise of James and Chris on the project. That was especially James's prior work with the other multifamily projects, and being able to carry that forward here was really important. Um, so so in the design, just to bring everyone up to speed, if you haven't done a PHIUS project in the past, PHIUS is comprised of the full PHIUS certification, but it also entails Energy Star, Zero Energy Ready Homes, Indoor Air Plus. So it's all of those three certifications plus PHIUS, and then so that comprises the passive house, and then because this is a MISHDA project, they also required us to do another certification, and we opted for the NGBS green, um, which has multiple levels, and we certified at the service level, or at the silver level. So jumping into PHIUS and some of the some elements of it, core to the passive house certification is your envelope, and that's your air barrier, your insulation, fenestration, and then your air sealing. And then of course the blower door, which we like to call the red door of truth. And I saw a question come in earlier about what ACH numbers were used. PHIUS no longer uses ACH. They use CFM per square foot of enclosure, and we'll get into some of the details later. But for the air barrier, it's absolutely critical to have your airtight layer, both from a comfort standpoint, but with infiltration, one of the I would say biggest elements that happens with infiltration is you've got water, so it's a durability measure. It pertains to heating and cooling, and so it's all part of building that super tight, super strong thermal enclosure. These photos are actually not from the project. These are just different materials that you can use. But these are details from the project. We had continuous insulation, as James mentions. We had a well-defined air barrier. We had a continuous air barrier and a continuous thermal envelope all the way through. And then some of I chose to put some of these details in here because where they're clouded around were some of the detailing that went into making sure that at the various transition points of the building, so from your foundation to above grade wall, your above grade wall to roof, and your different floors, that we had that continuity of the air barrier all the way around. Another element that I thought made this really successful was the compact design, or the almost simplicity of the footprint. We didn't have a lot of crazy architectural details. There wasn't an air barrier where we had like an interior air barrier in the building. We had an exterior air barrier throughout, you know, the entire building. It didn't weave in and out. So I think that made, from a constructability standpoint, it definitely helped with the success of the project, that there weren't crazy details that impacted the air barrier and ultimately impacted like our infiltration and our blower door testing. Another element is the air sealing. So if you've worked on single family homes in the past, multifamily projects are a different beast when we look at where leakage is coming from. It is both on the exterior of the envelope, but there's so much communication that can happen on the interior side. So, so the team did a really good job of identifying where these points are, where we needed to seal up, and specifically in between, like at the demising wall, what would happen at the truss, what would happen at the floor, etc. Then our windows. These are photos from a variety of PHIUS projects. We've got Smaritas in the bottom left-hand corner, but Alpin, Zola, Intis. Typically, we see third or triple pane glass being used just because it has the performance both from the thermal as well as the air leakage performance. And then during design, and James, you can, you know, chime in if there was anything else, but I think some of the conversations that we had outside of whatever the program requirements were, but we talked about the dryer penetrations and using the heat pumps and how that would impact the blower door test at the end. We looked at slab edge detailing. We looked at like wrapping and making sure that like the vapor barrier was integrated with the air barrier on the exterior. And then we also looked at ventilation design. So I think thinking about, you know, future projects, those were some of the elements that we additionally talked about to make sure that we were getting ahead of things and trying to make this as successful as possible. And then just other things that we as raters kept in mind. We're looking at the details, like are these details actually constructible? Does this make sense? As we're testing things, making sure that we're able to get in and test at a proper time, like during mid-construction and final, how compatible the multiple systems are with PHIUS's requirements. Someone had asked earlier about like the ventilation design. PHIUS requires that ventilation be ducted into each bedroom. So just making sure that we're keeping ahead of those. And then sequencing. Sequencing can heavily impact how the building performs, especially with the air barrier, because you've got different penetrations. And are we able to seal and get the air barrier correct at those locations? So so those are some of the things that we keep in mind. Another one is doing mock-ups or having installation reviews. Specifically on this project, we had calls about flashing around the windows, the roof insulation. So we were really involved in conversations all throughout design and then as construction was starting. So during mid-construction, I don't have as many slides here, but it was great. So we did our typical approach for mid-construction that included multiple visits to inspect and verify all different elements of the project. So framing, insulation, grading, both the interior and the exterior. We worked with the site super Josh to make sure that we were like consistently staying in step with them so that they could continue on their schedule. We did our air barrier reviews, our mid-construction blower door testing for the units. We did mid-construction blower door testing for the whole building. This bottom right photo is of one of the ERV runs. So we use the fog machine to fog out the ERV runs to make sure that those were getting sealed up as much as possible, because at the end, the testing and balancing that's required, it's not I don't necessarily think that it is something that tab contractors would think was super difficult. But we have such a small threshold in some of the areas that we wanted to make sure that we were getting ahead and that those runs were as tight as possible so that they could deliver the flow rates that we needed. Yeah, and then a couple photos of flashing around the doors, and we had the peel and stick. Conversations about different air barrier materials. I think one of the benefits of the peel and stick approach here is that the team could see that it was in place, it was on properly. The fluid applied air barriers are a great approach as well, but sometimes I don't know, there's something about the peel and stick that it just seemed to perform really well for them. And then this photo on the right hand side, you can see we're pulling up the TPO, and that TPO then wrapped over the top of the air barrier that had continued over the parapet. So we're integrating those layers as well. And then we did our whole building blower door testing. So I will say that we were super excited about the results of this test, and just to show some of like what happens. And maybe I should have made a little bit bigger of a photo at the top right. So we had to have a temporary enclosure built for the storefront and the entry. So the Pinnacle team did that. They have the like OSB behind, and then polyethylene sheathing or some sort of other sheathing or sheathing, and then it was taped. And if you can see close enough, this was during the pressurization test. You can see where some of the air was blowing out. You can also see on the left hand side where air, you can see like little bubbles where air was coming through between the sheathing panels, but that air barrier caught it. So it was, all those control layers were doing their job. And then another interesting aspect of this, so the total performance of the whole building test was, I think, the best that we've ever seen. For the windows, one thing that happened that we weren't expecting was that we actually did better in the pressurization test versus the depressurization test. And the reason why that was interesting is because typically the depressurization test, you're pulling the enclosure in, any dampers, that type of stuff. You're kind of making a little bit tighter, and then during pressurization, you're blowing air into the building and blowing it out. What we found is with the windows, it seemed that when we were doing the depressurization testing within the internal closing mechanisms of the window, it seemed like because the building was so tight, because they did such a good job of integrating all of their control layers, that it was pulling the windows open or unlocking them just a little bit, and then during the pressurization test, it was pushing them shut. So to a point where we were shocked enough that we actually came back like a week later because we thought we had problems with our equipment. So that was a testimony to the construction of the project, and just also how things worked together, which I think was really cool. And then some compliance conversations that happened during mid-construction, talking about, like, we really tried to talk about, during design, what are areas that would potentially be problematic for the air barrier. Sometimes you can't see everything, so we talked about those. We talked about window flashing. We talked about, overlapping control layers at the roof, and then on site, we talked with Josh and the team about our compartmentalization testing and what would need to happen, and what needed to be sealed in order to be successful for that. So then final testing, and I think I'm okay on time, but final testing, it's doing everything, for this is all the marbles. So we did our whole building blower door test. We did our unit testing, duct testing. We did domestic hot water temperaturized testing, all of the photo verification, all of the bedroom pressure testing, like this whole suite of testing and compliance with all the other programs that I mentioned at the beginning. So I will say that that our testing document log was huge to make sure that we had everything accounted for. And for the most part, everything went great. The day that we did our final whole building blower door test, it was freaking cold outside. So it was at the end of January this year, and it was really windy. And we didn't get started until later in the evening because we got all of our kind of performance testing done in the units, and then we wanted to get this test done. So we had the depressurization test, and this is Rick over here getting things set up. We only had to use one blower door for the entire building. And our depressurization, we did a multi-point test, and our pressurization, we were having a difficult time. It was also freezing, and so we were having a difficult time getting some of the baseline pressures, and actually not the baseline pressures, but the pressures, the building pressures at the lower levels, which is why you see more of a gap. But we still, the correlation coefficient was still accurate. So everything overall went really well. Our final average when we did both the pressurization and depressurization came to 0.044 CFM per square foot of enclosure. The passive house requirement is 0.06. So we passed with flying colors. and to just give a sense of comparison between code built buildings. So typically commercial projects are usually around a point 4. So we had 0.04. So we were, you know, hands down so much tighter than a code building. And it was really awesome to see and to be a part of. Um, the the items that we did have a little bit of some challenges with, the ventilation and the tab testing. We had a slight problem with the capacity of the units. So I think that one, maybe if we were able to either get maybe a slightly larger capacity system, um, or maybe there were some areas that needed to be sealed a little bit more. And then the whole building blower door, the wind issues. But other than that, it was a really successful project. And then I have to give a special shout out to Josh, who was the site super. He really took ownership of it. And it was, you know, we've had other projects where teams have been in it, but he really drove, you know, making sure that he was staying on top of everything. He asked all the right questions. He wanted to confirm things, and it's, you know, he's, you know, the Josh and his team are the ones that are making the project. James and the other members of the Pinnacle team set them up, and Joel as well set them up for success. And then Josh and his team took it over, and all the various trades. Have to give shout outs to really to everyone, mechanical contractors too. They were great. So it was a wonderful project. And I'll
Thanks,
stop
Lindsay.
talking.
So, Joel, if you if well, so there were a couple like a question here, I guess I kind of want to jump into given our time right now. And you know, it's a great question because you know, more and more I think it's important to consider where our buildings are and the climate risk associated with what is going to happen to them, especially in the future. You know, what are those risk factors? And so the question here really detailed wind, and you know, if you run any climate risk model in West Michigan, you will see wind is our number one threat. I can personally tell you that living here, it just gets so crazy windy. So their question was, you know, how did high wind load and uplift specifications get designed? And would you um, I guess, be open to other novel performances, like things, you know, about tornado risks and all that. So I guess, can you just speak to how, if this building at all was designed to mitigate the coming wind risks that we see, you know, in our models?
That'd be a good question for James.
Yeah.
It would be, and I have no answer for it.
Was anything, I guess, rated, or anything, I guess the things you're using just standard rated for wind risk at all? I guess maybe that's keep the question kind of simple.
Yeah, despite being an architect 12 years ago, I'm not the architect on the project. That was another member of our team.
Yeah.
I don't know that we put.
Yeah.
I don't think we did anything different from what we do on every other multifamily project in terms of wind
Sure.
load, and rely on code to push us in the right direction.
Yeah. Um, and then the other question that came in here was about the energy recovery ventilators. So I think it's confirmed that you did one per floor. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong there. But so then they were saying is, okay, if that is true, you know, how are the individual units and rooms ventilated and balanced, both exhaust and supply?
Sorry, can you repeat that? There's
I
one
think
per
it's
floor for
just
sure.
trying to get some more detail on then is it just, I guess maybe well, so
So
did you yeah, go ahead,
I
Lindsay. You
can
probably
maybe,
know the
sure.
ventilation detail, yeah.
Sure. So, so it seems, the strategy here was it was a centralized system, but it was centralized floor by floor. So instead of using like a rooftop ERV or something of that nature, the design was to have one unit serve each floor, and then in terms of how that worked with the units on the floor, each unit got served its supply, and then the bedrooms are required. So there was, depending on one or two bedrooms, and then you've got your supply air into common space, but then you have your exhaust coming from um, your kitchen and your bathrooms. And so within each unit, that was balanced. So I think in terms of how that worked strategically is that instead of having to balance one unit on every single floor, you're minimizing the size of the balancing and the flow rates that you have to work with, which was a successful approach.
Yeah. So Joel,
James, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, but
No, I mean, we were maxing out the Zender for what it was. I mean, you spoke to some of the challenges there.
yeah,
There isn't another size bigger.
yeah.
Um,
hmm Yep.
So I think Joel, this one kind of for you, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, of course, maybe some of the anecdotal sort of post-occupancy, right, information you can share on. And also if you're willing to share, like, what are you seeing in utility data? Are you evaluating it? Is it hitting the targets that you had hoped for? So if you can just share anything on that.
Yeah, I think the residents are really impressed with the quality. Um, the feeling that they have, they're not really focused on, monitoring their heating bills like when they come in the door, right? They're just thinking
Mhm.
about, do I qualify for housing? Am I going to be able to afford this rent? But then we're passing on savings to them, with the utility costs. I don't have any big conclusions yet since we're just kind of getting through our stabilization period. We're hitting our first winter with people in the building. So I think there's more to learn in terms of the impacts and the cost side for utilities. So I'm afraid I can't answer that question. But yeah, I think residents, they have certain ideas about what they deserve when they're getting affordable housing. And I think when you can deliver a really high quality product, it provides dignity. It says something to the community. It's something that, should be evidence for, future support of these projects going forward in all communities. Anytime anybody's in the area, they should stop in and take a look. It's a really beautiful space.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think that was noted too, the performance of the building. We had talked about this even during construction. Some of the folks were like, "Wow, this building performs differently. It feels different. It's staying warmer or it's staying cooler longer versus what you would have had experienced. The sound that Joel mentioned. So it's a different world from code built.
Yeah, I'd say that Josh, the superintendent, liked to say, "I can heat this building with a candle" when he was under construction. He was just really floored. He said the guys upstairs, they're pumping heat in the side at the bottom to keep the building warm to work in. He said the guys upstairs on the fourth floor were working their t-shirts all winter because it was just so hot. So it was like the tropics while we were under construction because of how tight the building was.
Mhm. Um, well, real quick before we move forward, I just wanted to give a quick reminder to everybody as we wrap up that yes, this session is being recorded and you can rewatch it, catch it later. Please share it with everyone. You can wait a couple days. It'll be available on our YouTube channel there. Or you can go there now, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and you'll get an instant update when it is available. For those of you here watching this in the future, not right now on demand, take your quiz with an 80% passing rate to receive your continuing ed. And for those of you here live today, if you've been here for the entire CU hour, you will receive your certificate from GutenbergCerts.com. So check your spam there for that, and you'll get all the codes you need for your CUs. And as always, a huge thanks to our board of directors, our volunteers, our executive director, Jose Reyna, and our nearly 500 members. We're trying to hit that goal by the end of the year, so help us get there if you haven't subscribed yet to become a member. And a huge thanks to our sponsors who are making, quite frankly, these products to help achieve passive house results, such as Rheem with decarbonized water heating, Build Equinox for smart ventilation, Panasonic, Tamarack, Timber HP for decarbonized insulation made out of wood right here in the United States. So yeah, we're going to stick around for some more questions for those who can hang out. The other one kind of drills in a little bit here, and if you could talk a little bit more about the decision to use the foil-faced exterior polyiso and the considerations about drying potential for that assembly, if that was discussed at all, or any other alternatives.
It's outside of our assembly essentially, right? Whether it's foil paste or not foil paste is mostly just to shed water.
Hmm.
Like water will get behind the siding, and wasn't considered from a building air barrier standpoint.
And then, can you talk a little bit about the foundation slab perimeter detail and any decision to forego exterior insulation there, or at least from what they're saying, it looked like fattened insulated baseboard was required to compensate for this. So a little bit of a question comment.
Yeah, that was one of the details we developed for the project. We talked a lot of ways to skin the cat of how you avoid the thermal bridge, coming from your siding to get onto your slab, and the most cost-effective way to do it. Um, you know, Ultimately, we had, Chris ran a thermal model to figure out the thermal bridge there, and we found it more cost-effective to um, bring some interior insulation up and overlap the siding insulation on the inside as opposed to wrapping down the foundation.
Mhm. And we wanted to go back to the water heater question. So I think the comment, the kind of thought was, with multifamily buildings in general, not even ones doing passive house, typically there's a pretty high internal heat gain and an internal load. Um, and so obviously with passive house, that's going to be even more. So I think the question was kind of like, was that a factor at all? Or did that show up in any of the models and the decisions of sort of the heat pump water heater kind of, because people get concerned that the heat pump water heater is going to steal that heat, but it's like maybe there's just so much load. Did that kind of conversation come up at all?
Sometimes you make a decision pretty early because it's the decision you're gonna make. We weren't gonna go with heat pump water heaters, so we just built the rest of the model around the solution we wanted.
Yeah, fair enough. And did you use roof tie-off points on the roof to avoid perimeter railing penetrations?
I have absolutely no idea. I don't think there's roof tie-offs.
Hmm.
I don't know what the code issue on that one is.
Um, and Lindsay, maybe this is one for you because I know like here in Michigan and many other states, of course, you have to have a foundational baseline green program, getting all five pillars of green. And of course, Passive House really adds that energy and that health aspect even more so. This one went with National Green Building Standard. Were there any just trade-offs or benefits that, Passive House just sort of just like, okay, if you do Passive House, it takes care of all this stuff on NGBS, but it might make something else a little more challenging, or just can you share a little bit more about the kind of alignment of the two?
Um, so Passive House, uh, I think really with some of the other programs. So for MISHDA, we've got NGBS, Enterprise Green Communities, and LEAD, right, for our
Mhm.
threshold programs. And those are all, Brett, as you mentioned, like comprehensive sustainability programs. So they
All right.
address sustainability from like a variety of different buckets: materials, indoor air quality, energy, site selection, things like that. So Passive House, though, even with the integration of Energy Star, Zero Energy Ready Homes, and Indoor Air Plus, really looks at your energy performance. It looks at indoor air quality. It looks at durability, but it doesn't address and material
Mhm.
selection a little bit, but it doesn't
Mhm.
address like location and site and that kind of stuff. Um, However, that being said, I think from our perspective as a consultant, we wanted the team to
Mhm.
focus on PHIUS because this was the first time that our groups were all together. So we chose a pathway that was approachable for the threshold that would allow us to still address sustainability and the various buckets, but really allow us to focus on PHIUS. So I think it was a really good supplementary program to utilize. Um, and yeah, it worked and clicked. So and the you know the benefit of NGBS or LEAD is that you've got different
Mhm.
tiers that you can hit. So it gives you the framework, and then you can, if you want to go above and beyond, you can do that as well. Um, and then Enterprise Green Communities, you can, as long as you get your 40 points, you're good to go. So yeah, so I think it was something that we chose that would work well with the project. And went from
Mhm.
there, and the project was a success for all programs.
Yeah.
To that point, and I'm trying to look through photos
Yeah.
to recall, but to that point, I think that's been a
Mhm.
conversation that's happened
Mhm.
in with PHIUS projects that like
Mhm.
people are like, can I open my windows?
Mhm.
And yes, you can open your windows. The Passive House
Right.
project doesn't mean that you can't open your windows. It's
All
just
right.
so well controlled from a comfort and durability
Mhm.
perspective.
Yeah.
But you can always open your windows. I can't speak to the screen,
It,
but I did want to say that because
yeah.
that has come up in the past
Mhm.
with,
Yeah.
as a negative aspect of the program, but
Right.
it's not true. You can open your.
The other question that came in is, was there any other kind of smart tech included in this? Obviously, solar, you could call that smart tech, but anything else, or is this pretty like set it and forget it, pretty dumb tech?
That is,
Which I say in a positive way.
yeah, yeah. Operations in a building like this are challenging.
Yeah.
So set it and forget it is usually how we're trying to
Hmm.
design.
Hmm. And then the other question follow up to that was any the material considered like renewable resources, more sustainable type materials like reduced embodied carbon? Was that part of the conversation at all?
No, you got to
Hmm.
start somewhere.
All right. Yeah.
There's a requirement for low VOC. So as
Sure.
part of Indoor Air Plus, and then NGBS does have certain requirements for this.
Yeah.
So they were compliant, at least
Hmm.
for Indoor Air Plus. That's all the
Hmm.
interior paints and finishes, the carpet padding, and then composite wood. So as this building, is so super tight, they made sure that for those particular elements, which make up a large portion of the building on the
Hmm.
interior side, that those were low to no VOC.
Yeah.
Brett, I chatted our building manager while
Yeah.
we were talking, and we do have screens, so
Okay.
that
So
clears that up.
someone it's probably just an older photo without one, so yeah. I was surprised to see that too. So, um, I think Joel, you're affordable housing developer. You're doing this work. You all are providing um, this opportunity for people in need across the state, which is huge, and incorporating sustainability. Is this something, I know there's certainly obviously requirements there, but is this something you're going to look at doing moving forward that you're seeing as an opportunity? Was this a one-time thing? Can you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, we have two applications in at the state right now that are both modeled PHIUS with Pinnacle. I'm imagining that Lindsay's team will be a part of that too. And, so I think we've had a really good positive experience in our first one. Those points, that I talked about, which are so important to actually get the primary funding mechanism to
Mhm.
construct these buildings, they're worth their weight in gold. And, obviously, if this thing was a huge negative cost on the project, we probably wouldn't do it. But
Mhm.
so far, so good. And, we'll have more data on the utility side as we hit 2026, since we can make some more educated decisions on that level. But
Yeah.
right now, we're going to continue to do it. Now, if those points go away and, that becomes a downward pressure on the
Mhm.
efficiency to, be competitive at the state level, I'd have to make some tough choices as a developer. But
Sure.
with such a limited resource and such a huge need for supply,
Hmm.
we work within these programs to the best of our ability. All
Yeah.
things considered, I think it's definitely a super high quality product that we put together. The tightness, the
Yeah.
materials, the thickness of walls, the insulation, and I would be glad to live in this building myself. So I would like to continue to do it.
Yeah. And as we wrap up, Jill, just can you remind us again where people can go to, learn more about your organization?
Yeah, Samaritas.org. Um, as I said, 91 years of service here in Lower Michigan, impacting thousands of lives across the state. And we
Yeah.
certainly always like to learn about new opportunities to partner. We do a full experience points as a LIHTC developer in the state of Michigan. So with
Yeah.
like that church that we heard about that had the property, it made a great partnership opportunity and with a patient partner to help us have the timeline to get one of these applications through planning and zoning and through an application at the state. So
Yeah.
love to, if people want to reach out to me, I don't know if our contact information is included in your follow-up, Brett, but I'd be glad to chat with anybody about future housing opportunities.
Yeah. Awesome. And James, where can people go to contact you or Pinnacle if they want to learn more about what you all are doing?
Yeah, we are at www.askourclients.com. You can hold me at jl@askourclients.com.
Thanks, James. And, Lindsay, obviously you and Eco Achievers are providing services regionally, but where can people go to reach out and learn more?
Yeah. Feel free to send me a note, Lindsay at ecoachievers.com. Our website is ecoachievers.com. We're on all the socials. So just drop me a line. I think that's probably the best if you want to get a hold of me. Emails are not, my inbox is dreadful, but yeah, I'm happy to talk and we're happy to support or just if you have questions, however we can help.
Yeah. Well, Joel, James, Lindsay, thank you so much. And, as we always have said it, and I'll keep repeating myself, uh, whatever project you're working on, put Passive House as your aim, put it as your North Star. You may not get there, and that's okay, but aim for it. If you don't aim for it, you can't get there. So aim for it, whether it's PHIUS, whether it's PHI, I don't want to get into that, but make it a goal and do it. And I believe we can get there and we can make our buildings better. So thank you all. Take care. Have a great rest of your week. We've got one more session before the new year, so have a wonderful holiday season to all of those who celebrate. So goodbye.
Thank you all.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.